at this day and time, we always like to think that we are looking at the cutting edge of technology to solve our problems. And so bringing new ideas with new experiences are an important thing for us to consider. And it may be that we're looking at something very new here today.
Wetlands are Mother Nature's way of cleaning natural stormwater runoff caused by humans, you can call it natural. And what the wetlands can't handle is the inundation from the man-made oil spills. And the highest and best use for a wetland is to stay a wetland. And we're going to get into the details today, a lot of this, but some of you may ask, you know, why am I here? I went to Baylor University undergrad from Waco, Texas, but I never made it into Arkansas. But the genesis of my story actually has ties to Arkansas, even though I haven't been here until Mayflower. In 2006, I stood then next to my Senator Hillary Clinton on the banks of Montgomery County on the Mohawk River, 500-year flood. I had no idea what a flood could do for oil-contaminated waters. I was wiped out. Chuck Schumer, Hillary Clinton, there's articles back from 2006. They were on the phone directly with me every 3 days as one of the largest employers in the community, and with the town and the fire chiefs. This whole notion of joint unified commands, I still don't get that, but I will tell you that FEMA and the elected officials, the way they coordinated with the fire department was amazing, and it really works. I have to say, you know, everyone wants to criticize the government, but the federal government did work. And a lot of the reasons I was able to create the only technology that was endorsed by BP out of 43,000 is because of the direct support from my then Senator Hillary Clinton. So I felt, when I read about Mayflower and everything and started thinking about this and what I experienced in BP, I felt like I had, you know, an obligation to scientifically get down here and see what I could do, because somebody from Arkansas was there for my community. And what happened was we almost, the whole community, when you walk in a disaster and people can't get formula for their kids and they're wiped out and there's contamination everywhere, you walk the streets, you feel the hopelessness, you feel the despair, you yourself want to break down, you can't do it, you just got to keep getting up and trying. So it goes to the long haul, and I admire everyone in Mayflower and what they're doing here. So what happened was I became a little obsessed with oil-contaminated water, because there's really, you know, no simple solution. Created a sponge that attracts oil like a magnet and repels water. So just when we were coming to market with it, the BP spill happened. I was told that it wouldn't work on anything, and no one would return phone calls, and that's when the whole thing for the unified command, I was exposed to this joint unified command center thing. So I went in the marshes on my own, chartered a boat. The captain said, I'm happy to take your money to charter about 50,000 people before you, and then I threw it in the marshes and started pulling the oil. Next thing I know is BP is calling me, getting me into the unified command center. How do we deploy this immediately? And one thing led to another. And then in November of 2010, there was a cover story on the USA Today. They used my picture in the marsh, where BP endorsed the product, talked about it being the 1 out of 43,000. And this brings it back to Arkansas too. Is it Whit O'Brien? That's James Lee Whit, right? Do I have that name? Well, Whit O'Brien, James O'Brien is quoted in that USA Today article. I could not agree more with what Whit O'Brien's gone on record on saying on the front page of USA Today. I just hope Whit O'Brien, as they move forward, merely means what they said. And I'd encourage all community members to read the quotes from James O'Brien from that USA Today article. And he kind of predicted kind of the lack of technology. So that's kind of a background that I thought would help everybody a little bit better understand about why we're here and why we're doing what we're doing. And I can tell you, the calls, I've been asked to brief at the federal level. And I'd like to invite the Sierra Club, the members of the Mayflower oil spill community, to have a transparent, let's lead by example, not finger point, not get upset, but let's bring people together and transparently look at data, because the federal government and the elected officials, not just in Arkansas, are very concerned. And they're very concerned about the wetlands. They view this as an international disaster, what's going on here, and this is very, very far from over. So I'm going to start now and go into the details of this presentation. Feel free to raise your hand and interrupt with questions at any time. And David Lincoln this morning too, that presentation was great overview of what you did. And you mentioned common sense, but what I've learned from being in these disasters, sometimes common sense isn't so common. You would think that maximizing surface area and contact with water to get the contaminants out makes a lot of common sense. You would think when you have heavy molecules that are known to suspend themselves and sink in the water column, that you're going to want to sample in the water column. But again, it's not always a conspiracy. Sometimes common sense just isn't common. I would like to introduce Skye Wallen too, who has been my development and kind of partner in this scientific endeavor. And he's been on the ground with me since April 1st and cataloged and documented a lot of the stuff that you're going to see. But I want to start with some basic background because there's a lot of stuff flying around. There's a lot of disinformation going on in the middle of a disaster. A little bit about the technology in the water. We're heavily involved in fracking and wastewater, world's largest mining companies cleaning up raffinate ponds, cleaning contamination with automated systems. This is an example of an EPA certified test. That is without our technology filtering, that is with the filtering. 92% reduction in oil and grease, dissolved solids, suspended solids, surfactants, and detergent. What we didn't know is that we had the ability to take out metals and detergents too. And that led to implications for the fracking industry and the calls that we're getting from Canada, from North Dakota, and other places that we are working. And one thing I learned recently is Arkansas, I guess, has the largest inventory of sarin gas or some poisonous gases. And for the same reason our stuff works with oil, it works with an antidote that is carbon-based and non-polar. If there's a terrorist attack, Homeland Security, first responders, open this pouch like an alcohol towelette after you have lobster or something, and you scrub yourself down. It has an antidote so you live and you can survive the poison gas attack. So this is an example of a host of different markets where it's used in medical applications also. Wanus Canal in Brooklyn, New York. Have anybody in this room heard of Brooklyn, New York? The Wanus Canal is probably more contaminated than the Gulf of Mexico was, and this is hundreds of years. There's a lot in common with the tar sands oil because of the asphaltenes and the similar molecules that we've been able to detect and fingerprint in Brooklyn, New York. And David, this goes to your point about common sense this morning. I mean, I couldn't say it any better. A white brown boom has 14 square feet of surface area. These tentacles or this eelgrass has 100 square feet of surface area. So it's about maximizing contact with the water. And it goes back to what James O'Brien said from Whit O'Brien from the cover of the USA Today in 2010. Why the oil companies are not using the best available technology is a question that just I can't answer. I can only keep asking the question. And this is what we do. We clip off the material. It's an open cell structure, and we put it in a canister. And that's what we've done in locations around Mayflower, which we'll get to. And these are the same chemical. This is from Brooklyn, New York. A volatile hydrocarbons fingerprinted, ethyl benzene, isopropyl toluene, and a whole host of other things that we found in the water. And the point is kind of a baseline reading and it works. And so we started doing all this stuff, and BP seeded barium, chromium, lead, mercury. We pull that out of the water. A lot of these heavy metals get chelated within the oil molecules. All that means is that they just get stuck in the oil, and then they come out with something that pulls the oil out. And what happened was BP had some internal meetings with their scientists. They had called the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, and we developed a very collaborative arrangement with scientists from throughout the world, which we take very seriously, and we're very transparent. We ask for peer review when we can, and we're excited about working with scientists from all over the place to solve some very important water contamination issues. The country of Bermuda called. They couldn't identify what was spilling in the creek. Well, we've been able to fingerprint that in diesel and find the source. and then various blends of hydrocarbons and help solve the problem. And every molecule of oil, like every human being, has a specific fingerprint. This is Battelle Laboratories. They do a lot of work for the Department of Defense. They do some of our analysis work. That's just the fingerprint of what we found in Bermuda. It's just like a human being. Everything is unique. So if you can identify what's in your water, you can stop a small spill before it becomes a large-scale disaster. And if you're an oil company, I mean, if you're Exxon, and take this to Mayflower, if you want to prove that there's no oil in the water column, you can deploy this technology. You can do it jointly, like I told one of the reporters today. We would like to openly do testing with Exxon all over the cove and find out what's in that water column. So this technology also gives Exxon the ability to work with the community and then announce that there is no oil in the water column or related solvents or chemicals. This is a study in Bermuda with stormwater, and what this basically says, copper, lead, zinc, 70 to 30% of their runoff and contamination issues were reduced after filtering it with this material. This is oil and grease, chemical oxygen emitters, biological oxygen emitters. And the point of sharing this today is to set the foundation to show that this technology is credible, it's very science-based. Because in this situation, it's very important to separate fact from fiction, which we know all too well, right, Tam? So this is, it's hard to believe sometimes, these fancy systems with all these chemicals. You just take these strips, it's all about surface area, you put it in a drain. This company was an industrial laundromat in Philadelphia, went from 1,120 parts per million to less than 100. So they stopped 30,000 a month in fines, but more importantly, what is the cumulative effect with the growth in the population and the diminishing wetlands? We're losing our ability to naturally filter our water. What the most important thing is to filter the waterways so we don't run out of clean water. That's a good thing. And this is Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution last summer. We specifically were getting calls from Canada. There's a lot of spills up in Canada. The Canadian government is being very open, and a lot of the companies want to solve the problems. And their big problem is the tar sands. Some of it, the same Wabasca crude that is here in Mayflower. So we started working at Woods Hole with scientists developing suspended synthetic eelgrass and putting it in the water column. We attempted to deploy this, and we did offer this to Exxon and did some testing with them early on in the spill. And what you can see here is it's stopping the oil. It's suspended in the water column, and the oil beyond it is the water beyond it is oil free. And this is all documented on a YouTube video, and anybody interested can look at that later. And again, here again goes back to common sense. If the water column is defined as beneath the surface, above the bottom. So you have all these tar sands, oils, and molecules from the Wabasca crude and the Sonova diluent, all floating around and floating around here. If you're going to grab from the surface instantaneously, you're probably not. You're going to get some. You're going to get some of the more volatiles, or you're going to grab from the middle. What you need is to suspend something in that water column that mimics a life form or a matrix, and that's where what we have comes in, because it attracts the contamination and it repels the water. And for those interested, there are third-party white papers written by scientists from the Woods Hole. Go back. But it's this simple diagram, and if you want to know what's in the water column in the cove and the lake, or in the future, prepared for future spills, to be able to put something in the water that can remove the oil and take advantage of surface area. And what this is when we sit around with the scientists, we don't really think we've come up with something that novel, but we're mimicking Mother Nature. Because what are wetlands and eelgrass, and they call it kelp on the West Coast? What are the wetlands? They maximize surface area. There's a reason eelgrass exists, because it maximizes surface area. So as we are losing the wetlands and the ability for Mother Nature, we're trying to come up with a way to replace it by mimicking Mother Nature and maximizing surface area. And this is from the Sherry Campbell Bridge, Clarn Creek, and there you see us taking these tentacles and underneath the water to maximize the water flow. We have hundreds of pages of reports. So these are our Mayflower water column testing results. And these are by no means definitive. Our recommendation is a lot more work needs to be done. We've identified local Arkansas people that grew up here, that are licensed, certified, that can go on behalf of the community and test at various points in the cove and throughout the main body of the lake. Go back on. I won't spend a lot of time on this. I'm free to meet afterwards and go through the detailed reports. But a lot of the standard volatiles, semi-volatiles, those don't show up in the standard reports because we're in uncharted territory with these tar sands and all these different chemicals. So we're finding very long chain carbons, hydrocarbons, that are showing up as tentatively identified compounds. And that's where we need to focus, is what is really in the water, not just the standard list you're looking for. For example, if you're looking for one specific virus and you're not testing for the other, that other virus is still going to contaminate people and get sick. You're not going to know it's there. You're not going to know it's there. So these are the various locations. What we call the subway ditch, Exxon Site B. Everyone familiar with that? We fingerprinted things like phenanthrene and some of the different solvents over there, and we matched those up on various points in the cove and in the main body of the lake. And I am not a doctor, I'm not an expert in any of this, but I will say we have heard from the Athabasca Indians that have suffered basically in a similar way as Mayflower. And that's why I asked the question about red blood cells. That's what the experts are asking me about. And some of the naphthalines we're finding and some of these heavy long chain molecules, some of the semi-volatiles, they are consistent with some of the health effects that they are seeing in the Athabasca River region of Canada, where all of this comes from. And we've got the dam, we found long chain hydrocarbons there, naphthalene, methyl esters of acetic acid. I mean, I could keep going on all this stuff. And we found different solvents. Now, what some people will come back and say, absolutely, could there be prior contamination? Could somebody have similar oils that are dumping illegally in the lake? That's a possibility. I'm not here to draw that conclusion, but what I can say is the subway ditch is matching up fingerprint-wise with the molecules that we're finding in the main body of the lake. So that there's a strong probability, that's why we need to do more testing in the water. There's a strong probability that's linked to the Exxon pipeline stuff. And we've got Mallard Lane, and we actually found a long chain hydrocarbon in a ditch behind, 2 roads behind Starlight Road. We just got these results back in about 48 hours ago, and we're still analyzing that. But it appears as though there's a lot of heavy solvents, heavy molecules floating up and down the water column. This is April 1st, 2013, when we first arrived on the ground, and that's the subway ditch. And that's deploying, that's when I had no idea if our stuff would even work on the heavy tar sands, and we threw the stuff in the water and it worked. And this is what, and again, this goes, hold this slide here. This goes to what David was saying. This, again, they don't know, there's never been a spill like this in a suburban area, so they're basically spraying the rocks and spraying the ground like they did in Valdez, 40 years ago. Why aren't they using the best available technology? It's a question that should be asked. And this is how it's moving. You can see this oil. This was taken on April 1st. This is moving from the subway ditch underneath I-40 into the cove, and then through the cove into the main body of the lake. And you can see it flowing right underneath, right by the white-brown booms. And the sheen, a lot of, it's the sheen and sometimes the clear chemicals that can hurt you more than the dark oil. So it is irresponsible for anybody to say there's no visible oil in the water. You're okay. The point is, again, like you said, it's the long haul. You're asked to see the science behind everything, whether it's me saying something or anybody else. demand answers and ask tough questions. That just shows more. And this is Obi Cambry, who we tested our product with on April 2nd. And his concern was that we wouldn't be able to hold, I mean, that like the white booms, the clear water doesn't come out and the tar sands oil flows, but you can see clear water droplets coming out and removing it. So what we have learned is the technology works, and we put the eelgrass in the water column, and these are ADEQ FOIA pictures from March 29th, and it's the heavy flow in the drainage ditches that filled up the cove. And those, again, this is the cove from April 24th, and those pictures speak for themselves. I mean, there's a lot more that could have been done to remove the oil without destroying the wetlands. And this is a picture from April, and this is what is being done to go to the wetlands. So the ability of the wetlands to naturally filter the water has now been taken away, and the water is still in the water column. So, and again, this is April, and this is what is going on. So they're spraying. This is April 10th, and they're spraying the wetlands.
What are they spraying?
Well, hold that slide. What we believe, I think they're just pulling the water from the cove out and spraying down the plant life and the trees and the vegetation to get the oil down. Again, people mentioned that I have seen no indication of dispersant. I don't guess or speculate, but there's no indication that there's any dispersant being used. I don't think that they could. I don't know. Has the Sierra Club seen any indication of dispersant?
We have not seen any dispersant.
Yeah, so it's not showing up in our reports. So what they're doing is just spraying it down and getting it into the water column and then bulldozing it. Now, if in this day and age, if Exxon's committed to the best available technology for their refineries, that cannot be the best available technology to deal with this. How can that be? And this is the site. These are just the different map sites, and we can get into this later. I'm just trying to get through this, but you can see how they boomed the areas off and sectioned it off. But there was a lot of rain and it flooded, and this whole notion, according to the USGS, the cove is part of Lake Conway, and it is connected. I want to get to those pictures. And this is from April 23rd and April 21st, where we're in the subway ditch, and those are part of the results that we have. And to go back to that slide. And this is how we were just, we were with some international media from Korea actually doing a documentary about tar sands that tracked us down. Literally, this stuff started coming up from the bottom as we were there. So that we see firsthand, and we have video, extensive footage on video of the oil and the related solvents coming up in the water column as the water moves. Nothing's in a steady state, it's moving around. So I want to stop right here and probably go to the other bit. Now first of all, any questions? I know we're trying to move quickly and get a lot of information you may have not seen before out. Yes.
Your eelgrass, what kind of material is it made from, if that's not a proprietary question?
It's not at all. It's ethylene methylacrylate, and it's the same material approved for Homeland Security and medical applications.
Okay, so what's it actually made from? I mean, it has to be made from something, right? I mean, you just don't walk out and find it in nature, right?
It's a byproduct from refining, and that's usually what gets thrown out as a byproduct of oil and gas.
Okay, so it's made from oil and gas.
It's made from oil, it's made from natural gas, and it's cracked.
So what happens to it after you use it? Can you clean it and reuse it, or do you have to dispose of it?
Mayflower very good question, and a lot of that is answered by BP in that USA Today article. But what BP did in the Gulf is they reused it an average of 25 times. There's a biodegradable initiator in there that when it does go to a landfill, it breaks down over time with the good microbes.
Okay, so do you take?
So it gets
is
squeezed.
it stripped of everything that's harmful?
We have an auto, for example, I can answer a specific question. One of the world's largest mining companies, we have an automated belt that goes through basically a fracking pond, takes the oil out, it squeezes and recovers the oil instantly, and filters it, and it gets reused about 30 to 40 times in that case.
And then I just wanted to make one comment about the things that you're finding with your eelgrass. Chemically, it makes sense. The less volatile things are going to be down in the water column, and that's where you would expect to see the heavier molecular weight chemicals like the naphthalene and the long chain hydrocarbons. But I also wanted to ask, have you ever actually used this at other industrial sites, such as where companies have been dumping things like from paper mills or things like that? And could you possibly use something like this to make a fingerprint of different chemical waste so that you could track down
Absolutely.
polluters?
Actually, the rivers in Maine, we're actually doing that in Maine. Near there's a lot of beautiful waterfalls there, just like there are here. And there's paper mills that are notorious polluters, and we're using that around to fingerprint the various contamination. Yes.
Is this just for above ground water, like underground water? Just that you can't do this, can you?
No, underground, what we submerge it, we put weights on it. That's what we're designing with scientists from the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution right now. And around Cape Cod, oyster beds, eelgrass, I mean, thank God there hasn't been an oil spill event, but the problem is the population density in the wastewater, so all the natural eelgrass beds are disappearing. So we are literally, when in the middle of all this, we kind of stopped what we're doing up there to come down here. But we're designing ways to do test areas now in salt marshes to help bring the life back and restore that natural eelgrass.
But we've also dug holes and found subsurface water, and we've tested that as well.
What about trichloroethylene? I think that's the word, trichloroethylene. I guess that's the word, but it's TCE, whatever TCE is. Can you all, have you all ever dealt with that?
I've seen lab results, I believe, in out of Wanus Canal in Brooklyn, New York, where we have removed that from the water.
Thank you.
That's nasty stuff. You want to stay away from it if you can.
Well, it's all over Fort Smith.
Yes.
What was the outcome of the testing with Exxon?
The outcome, I really don't know how to answer that.
It was a success.
The outcome is that we have identified what we believe to be positive results, that the tar sands, oil, and the heavy molecules and solvents, dilbit, call it what you want, remain in the Conway and in the Cove area.
And what was Exxon's response to that?
They've been too busy to respond. So, and I will say that when we went into the command center, we had this recorded and we have it on tape. They identified a scientist, David Palandro. There are email exchanges. We're sitting on a lot of information that we are gradually releasing to the media and the public. And he says he works with the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, all excited. And I said, well, that's fantastic because we'd love to work with you on all this stuff on solving this problem. And then I got a phone call and I confirmed it in an email. David Palandro from Exxon said, we don't need any alternate technology. This spill is cleaned up. That was the response. If you'd love, I'd love to send you the email. Yeah, and maybe I want to let Sky kind of explain. This is a 3 to 4 minute video, and we're going to show this, and we're almost finished. But quick question?
All right, real quickly, and you may have answered this, and I didn't hear, or maybe in here, but what measures are being taken out in Plum Creek, south of
We have taken measurements to detect for various metals in some solvents, which we have detected off the Sherry Campbell Bridge, I believe it's called. But Arkansas Game and Fish at this time does not want any more testing occurring. So I would encourage you as residents of Arkansas to make yourself known to, what is it, Judge Dodson that is your local official. Is he here?
Yeah.
Well, I would think that Judge Dodson would have an interest in the community and making sure that Arkansas Game and Fish would allow continued testing. Yes?
I heard a rumor that you were ticketed when you met with Arkansas Game and Fish. Will you actually written a citation?
Yeah, I met with a law firm that is representing some people in the community, reached out to me as a code expert with a water column, and there was an armed guy waiting for me with a citation for commercial activities on the property of Arkansas Game and Fish, but I'm not worried about it. It's just, you know, I don't have an explanation as to why we've done all this scientifically and on our own on behalf of the community. So,
So we're talking about what our goals in Mayflower are, and they are to inform and empower y'all with data, with this information. And there are ongoing disasters that this is our 7th time to Arkansas, and we'll have to say that, I mean, we both feel at home now. And honestly, I've kind of fallen in love with all these people. And so that's basically why we're here. We came for an experiment to test our technology and to give it away, but we ended up, I think, making a lot of great friends. And I just wanted to, this video is kind of a recap of a lot of the things we've done. It's pretty short. And the KATV calls us the storm chasers of oil spills. And I just want to show you this little bit. Right after the Pegasus pipeline broke, the oil spill began, and Scott instantly called me and said, "We're going. Right, this is what we do." So,
let me add to this. I got to tell this story. So it's April 1st. No, it's April 1st, and someone that will go nameless missed their flight and overslept coming in. So I'm getting a call from national Canadian television and people on tar sands. So they're like, "We want to get the story out. You're there. What's it like on the ground?" So I had to take my iPhone and film myself because the person that would remain nameless missed his flight. So
it was actually a strategic, artistic decision because this is really raw and this is really great stuff. And I can't. It's all Scott here. So this is what we do. There's an oil spill.
Arkansas, April 1st at the Exxon tar sands oil pipeline smell. As you can see behind me, I'm over a creek where the toxic tar sands oil has been discharged. The smell is dizzying. It makes you feel very lightheaded, and you can literally smell the benzene fumes in the air. And this is unlike the BP oil spill. It's very, very thick, black tar.
And this is our experiment with Exxon.
It is mixed with benzene,
the whole,
and you can smell it in the air.
In a matter of a couple minutes. Exxon officials were present during this experiment. And so we kind of told, by Exxon that they weren't interested, so we proceeded to test more of our technology and testing the water and seeing how these tar sands, wondering if they've actually spread. At the time, the reports from various government officials and Exxon said there was no oil contamination in the lake. So we decided to, Scott has become an expert at how water moves. So Scott was saying he's looking at maps, he's saying it's absolutely impossible. There must be contamination. It doesn't make any sense. It rained. They're saying the cove isn't part of the lake, but there is a giant pipe that goes from the cove into the lake. It's of course part of the lake.
What about the river, the Arkansas River?
It ultimately goes towards the Long Creek, and then towards the Arkansas River, and then towards the Mississippi River, and then to the Gulf of Mexico, and then throughout all the oceans. So this is why this is an international disaster, and it's a very special time for this community. It's an unfortunate time, but what's going on here is very important. And I think that it's easy to get depressed about a lot of these things, but there is still a lot of things that can be done. So we have data, we have this information that we're giving, and you must use this information, and you have to pressure your congressmen and your local politicians and keep this story alive, because this is going to be an issue for a long time. So, you know, we are being called to Canada and Nigeria and all these places, but we've placed a special emphasis on Arkansas, and you know, we hope that y'all will, you know, lead a global effort to protect our waterways. So this is how we test. We weight it down, and actually we can do multiple levels of the water. So we can attach multiple indicators to the rope.
There's a dark residue.
That was under the Lake 189 explosive dam, where it's heavy.
And the beauty of what we can do with the Opflex environmental indicator is we can cut this off and detect trace amounts. So what I'm going to do now is take this, and this is just after one submergence point. This is just after one submergence point underneath the bridge here. And we're going to take this to submit to a lab and put it in a sealed glass container. And you can see it in here, and then we can have this fingerprinted like we've done throughout the country.
That was at 13 feet.
That was at 13 feet.
I think that's Highway 64.
So we actually did tests in the marshlands as well before. So, well, one thing we've been wondering is why national media is not covering this story.
We're getting calls from the city.
The Koreans flew out. So, I'm not going to determine any conclusions, but
urban area, in the waterways, which connect the Arkansas River to the Mississippi River to the Gulf of Mexico.
So a lot of this is kind of review, but we're going to make this a little more global here.
We run the land, we go hunting for long trips.
So that's behind Crafton Lake. Naphthalene, various benzene-related compounds that match up to the submarine ditch are confirmed with the third-party results.
Crafton, behind Batesville and Street.
So what's going on here is unique, but it's going on all over the world, and we're just going to play this short piece from a documentary that we found.
You know, we have a call set up when we make contact with the Athabasca Indians, who are dealing with the same situation every day with the Athabasca River, which is where the Wabasca crude and Sonova sends it.
I got a question.
Yes.
Did y'all do any testing up on the north part of Lake Conway around Gold Creek, Caney Creek?
Mallard Lane we did.
Mallard Lane is on the southern part. On the northern part, on Caney Creek.
We haven't.
Gold Creek.
I mean, my theory, I think some drainage ditches run to the northern part. In the law firms that have reached out to me, I've asked them to get that every place where there's a drainage ditch needs to be fingerprinted and mapped out. Every place needs to be identified that flows.
And on a regular basis.
But wouldn't that be a good test source? I mean, that wouldn't have any of the pollutants, sir?
You're thinking Mallard Lane.
No, sir, I know the lake probably as good as anyone in this room.
I'm happy to test it. Call Judge Dodson and tell him to tell the Arkansas.
The reason why I brought this up would be this. If you tested up there and it showed no oil, that's where the north part is, that's where the lake is fed primarily from.
Correct.
Then you have a good test place, a good test platform to make your argument. But if you're only testing down here on this end, you may be picking up residue from boat motors. That lake's 50 years old.
Well, that's a very good point, and some of the things we're picking up are heavy molecules not associated with boat motors. We do, on April 6th though, we took a baseline control sample right near the dam. It tested non-detects across the board on everything. So that's our control sample. So that was before, if you remember, when it rained heavily, we didn't find any barium, we didn't find anything that could have been from boat traffic on April 6th.
But I mean, it's really important that you all. I mean, I think everyone here is fairly active. It's very important that you spread the message and make sure that proper testing is going on and continuously, so you can track the continuing spread, there's still tar sands going into the cove. So this is not finished, basically.
When you see this segment, don't play yet. When you see this segment, this is from the Athabasca Indians. Your spine's going to chill when they talk about the commonalities in the water and what they're doing with it.
Yes.
And we go hunting for long trips. And now we can't go to the river and we can't go to the lake and just, pick up our water and drink it, because that we don't know what the contamination levels are. No one has done a thorough analysis to know what is the level of contamination in our water systems. All we know is we see deformed fish, and we see lesions on our fish and sick animals. And the commonality between sick animals and the sick fish is water. And people getting sick it's water. It's the only thing you can point to.
Have you done an analysis on chemical composition of the rock, Athabasca crude that came into Mayflower?
No, I'm trying to get my hands on some, and I think the Indians are going to help me, so that's my next step.
Somebody's got
After this, I want to make all my data available to the Sierra Club to screen it, to do whatever you wish with it. So I plan to do that, and
We need to get a jar of the oil that is going down.
I'm going to be able to do that because it's spilling all the time, and they're all calling me up there to help solve the problem. Just to quickly go through this, you can see how it repels the water, the water droplets come out. And this is May 19th. And some of the residents have said the lily pads are not as big, the ducks aren't around, the squirrels aren't around, the people aren't feeling well. I mean, that's the feedback we're hearing. The people that know the best are the people in the community that have lived here.
Well, that's a fact. I do live there. They are gone. Almost, your squirrels aren't so much because they don't care. But your deer, your turkey, they're all gone.
We're waiting for this testing. Now, this is where the cove abuts 89, where it flows in, and we put this in the water on May 19th. And I'm told, that's evidence of a lot of interesting things going on in the water column. And that's where we're waiting. We don't have these results yet, but we'll have them in about 5 more days. We got those last week. So there's where the cove flows, and that's the lake portion. And you talk about ease of deployment. You just kind of throw it in the water, let it sit in the water column, and you can cut tentacles off over time. And it's about bioaccumulation, or what over a period of time, if you're an organism in the water column, you're exposed to 1/billionth of a part per million of toxin. What does that become in 1 day, in 2 days, in 3 days? It's much more than just an instantaneous grab sample. And what we end with is this rainbow overcame. This rainbow we saw over the dam, and we saw that as a great sign of hope. We're positive, we're realistic. You can't solve a problem until you're willing to identify it. Yeah. Yes?
I got a question. James Robinson. I have to ask this question. Now, we're still using the same lingo as Exxon or maybe, Fish and Game calling it a cove. And it shouldn't be, we're still yelling cove, and it's not a cove, it's actually Lake Conway. We gotta quit using the word cove and use the word Lake Conway. Because as long as we use that word, it's gonna give them a way out of saying, hey, it's in a cove versus Lake Conway.
You're exactly right.
Exactly.
I'm not trying to mince words like Exxon, I'm really not, I apologize for that, but I'd like to be as accurate, so I refer to it as the cove portion of Lake Conway. Is that Glenn and David, the cove portion of Lake Conway, or we call it Lake Conway?
It's actually Lake Conway.
Well, that's innocent by disassociation.
Let me say this way, here's where Lake Conway flows into Lake Conway, because this is Lake Conway flowing into Lake Conway. This is the outfall pipe, and here are these wonderful orange containment booms that we filmed during a rainstorm, and you can see it spreading. See this? We've got this on video footage too. You can see Lake Conway Cove flowing into the main body, and you can see it spreading right by everything. And I wanted to show, I didn't get to this before, the maps, these are the wetlands on April 2nd when we were with Exxon. These are that same location you saw me doing the demo, that's on May 18th.
then
So they say,
just-
Joyce, that the most powerful thing are these, if there's only two, April 2nd, May 18th.
I just planted a nice fresh layer of grass. It looks really pretty. It'll probably die soon. It's just in time for them to leave.
Yeah, and then I just want to, these are the various maps, we don't need to get into these right now, but I did learn this from the local Arkansas company who grew up here, who's a certified hazmat guy, Brad Fawcett, you may be hearing his name soon. He educated me with USGS maps. Now, I got accused recently of making these up in a meeting with Arkansas Game and Fish, and I said, listen, you can go right on the internet. I got this from Brad Fawcett, who's a certified contractor that we're actually starting to do work with here. These are the eddy cycle or the water flow maps from USGS, and they finally believe me, but he's correct. If you look at the flow patterns, this makes sense with where we're finding contamination. You at a minimum want to do water column testing here, 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 all over Lake Conway. In the cove portion, or the Lake Conway portion here, what is that? Lake Conway south of 89, that's a better way to say it. Lake Conway south of 89. Statistically, there should be 10 to 12 data points. I've only seen like 1 or 2 with Exxon. They're staying away with what's in here. There needs to be immediate water column testing here on behalf of the community. Well, so there's still water back there, that's right, in some of the, but there's just, statistically, there's just not enough data, but these what Brad Fawcett told me, these eddy cycles, we now have a better understanding why we found what we found on Mallard Lane and other areas, understanding the current flow from USGS. This is not me, this is from an expert giving this to me from the USGS. So if anybody believes this is an error, they should contact the USGS. So, other than that, that's basically what we have to go over. Any questions?
Well, the people that live here know, we don't call that the cold area. Where that red line goes down, it kind of stops there, see when it rains a lot, it will overflow and go into the other south area. And that feeds into Polarum Creek, and that goes into the river. So that's what we're trying to explain when it's feeding down through there. And when it rains a lot, floods, it goes through there. I mean,
we were there after a rainstorm and we believe it flooded down there. We're thinking about the Polarum Creek because what they were doing was keeping the dam, and the problem was all the flooding, they had to release the dam. But I think they followed that other pattern. I know exactly what you're saying.
You see where you just waved your hand there on the cove? That's where I live. My backyard is on the cove, about 200 feet from it. That whole area. I grew up there. I'm 60 years old. My family moved there in 1870s. Yes, I do know the lake real well. That area in there has been under control of fishing game. We are lucky though. I know people's going to think I'm crazy, but if it was built back properly back in 1950s, it'd be a disaster. There's supposed to be a bridge there, an open water bridge, where them pipes are coming from the cove to Lake Conway.
They had to build that and then created Lake Conway.
Well, we had a flood back before they built Lake Conway. They had to alter the road in front of my house. Genevieve there knows where I live. It was once 89. Then the court order closed that road, and they reopened that road there at 89 there where you're seeing the cove joins the lake. Up until that point, there was a bridge there, an open water, free-flowing bridge. And according to the sources I have that owns the property around the cove, Ashley Corporation, in the future there's going to be a bridge there anyway. Because they're going to have that took out and opened up for lakefront property, is what he informed me in 1992. So we're lucky that the pipes are there as they are now. Or it would have been a free flow and just shot right in there. So
that's what I'm saying about where it goes under Stone Dam Creek up there. It's right under the lake, by the freeway where they're doing all the work right now.
Right.
I mean, if it breaks there, forget it. The whole lake's gone.
And they removed tons and tons and tons of dirt. That gap you see there between the red line and the interstate, there was a wooded gap there, probably 400 feet or more. I hunted in there when I was a kid. That's gone now. That's all gone. And it won't never be the same.
Scrutiny and your energy does not stop. This is not over. It's upsetting, but you have to be pressuring all the people in charge to continue proper testing and proper cleanup because it's not over. So, and there's a lot that can be done. It's not, it's not hopeless.